My name is Sebastian Stefanovic. I'm a violist, and I'm currently in Baltimore, Maryland, at my parents' house where I was growing up. My dad is a musician, so is my mother. My dad is in the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. My mom works at a violin shop. So music was always part of my life, from the very beginning. I was just asking my mom if she can remember anything because I don't remember how I got into music. She said, from a very early age, I was dancing around to Porgy and Bess and conducting at outdoor concerts. So I guess the fact that I don't even remember that tells you something about how ingrained it's been for my entire life. I have two younger brothers, both are cellists, so yeah, it's always been a part of me. I'm currently a master's student at Rice University in Houston, Texas, and I'm going into my second year.
Great. Thanks. I love the idea of you conducting at an extremely young age without knowing that you're conducting. And so, I mean, I guess that's how some of the great conductors are born, they just.
Well, I think it's much easier to pantomime someone conducting than someone playing a violin or viola.
um, so I was hoping you could perhaps talk a little bit about what is sort of driving you or important to you as a musician as you live your life as a creative person.
Well, I think I've learned a lot about that these last few months, and I'm sure everyone has said that to some degree. I think for me, what it really is about connecting with other people. I can tell that because I'm so much less productive these days when I do not have rehearsals to look forward to. I do not have performances to look forward to. It's amazing the difference in productivity on a regular day these last few months versus a day that's packed full of rehearsals and performances and classes. So I think the chance to really get to spend time with other people working hard on something we all love is what really draws me to music, and I'm excited to get back to that as soon as possible. And this has been a way to do that, albeit virtually.
Is there something that you feel is actually being specifically communicated through those types of interactions that's important to you?
It really can vary, especially if you're working. The difference can be huge if you're working with a group you've been working with for ages. I was in a very serious quartet for a long time where we knew each other so well we hardly needed to say anything. Versus, sometimes you're working with people you've met that morning. But maybe the common connection there is that it's a very useful thing to learn for every person, not just musicians, to be able to work with people who have completely different points of view, where you have to work together on an artistic whole despite trying to retain some individual voice. And I think that's something that really applies to every part of life.
I agree. Yeah. Um, Maybe you could talk a little bit about something that has nothing to do with your musical life, like a non-musical, you know, goal, not a goal, or hobby, or maybe just other area of interest, or something that's, like.
Well, I'll start with the really lame, as far away from music as possible stuff. You said goal. I'm a big soccer fan. I've been
Oh,
watching
okay.
a lot of soccer these last few weeks and months since they started up again in Europe.
Yep.
I'm playing a lot with my dad and brothers out in the yard.
Okay.
It's nice to throw myself at something that I'm absolutely unskilled at and have had zero formal training in, and still run my heart out and play my heart out. So that's been a really fun thing. I've also gotten a chance to do some reading, which I normally don't delve into. I got into the Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky. Um, yeah,
This
it's go ahead.
this summer.
Yeah, this summer. Yeah, I
Yeah.
read it in May. Had a little book club with some of my friends. We talked about it. It's amazingly, relevant today, of course, like a lot of great literature is.
Since it's summer, I also recommend reading um, Crime and Punishment because
I
it's.
happened to read that in high school, yeah. And that was what made me convinced that I would make it through the Brothers Karamazov and it would be enjoyable for me.
It's the perfect summer novel.
Maybe, maybe.
Um, and the last thing I just wanted to ask you about is if maybe you could talk a little bit, either specifically or more generally, about what's really important to you as you move forward in your life in this world. You're a young person, and there's a whole future ahead of you, and I'm just sort of interested in knowing what's of value to you, what's of importance to you.
Well, I kind of want to come back to what I was talking about with music being a great way to learn about, interacting with other people and, leadership, working together on something larger than yourself. I think my generation, I see this even more in my younger brother who's 15. My generation is so socially active and socially driven all the time, whether it be politics specifically or social justice or change in general. I was lucky enough to go to high school at Baltimore School for the Arts. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a public school in Baltimore City, which means it's free. And I think they have, maybe a 10% acceptance rate, but the amazing thing is that they don't look at your grades at all. You can be a middle schooler who has never, never really gone to school, never really taken it seriously. But if you show, even if you haven't had experience, they take kids who are very aware of their bodies and interested in learning how to use them and train them in ballet when they've never done ballet before. And despite, not focusing on grades for admittance at all, the graduation rate I think is like 97% and 98% or something like that get into college, which is, I mean, astonishing for any school, but even more so for one that, doesn't pride itself on academic selectivity. So I think that does show something about how the arts really can hugely impact people's lives. And I'm really interested in kind of that intersection of how what we've learned to do as extremely trained musicians can overlap with how we interact with other people in everyday life.
Mhm. That's great. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk, and I look forward to hearing you play at the conference later on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.